with us again and for all the hard work that you and your team are doing in responding to our many inquiries. And because I said that, I expect mine to be prioritized. Just kidding, guys.
Lol.
We prioritize everybody first, Senator.
Thank you, yeah. Especially the committee, I hope. Because we do have a short period of time here, and we have a lot of work yet to do. You talked a little about jobs and the economy earlier, and my colleague, Congressman Clyburn, just raised this issue, the importance of jobs, which is, after all, one way you get people paying taxes is to be sure they have the opportunity to earn enough money to pay those taxes. And you said that you believe that demand was the key issue, and the source of that lack of demand was the tough question. And I would just ask you if you could comment on the unsustainable fiscal path that you've outlined repeatedly, including again today, and the fact that, as you said, we're increasing the debt by anywhere from $3.5 trillion to $9 trillion over the coming decade, depending on whether you use the current law or current policy baseline, reminding us that our commitment here is to reach 1.5 and 1.2 to avoid sequester. That, of course, isn't even close to the increase we're likely to see from the current $14.5 trillion debt. What impact does that have? I'm sure you've looked at the Rogoff and Reinhardt study and others who have commented on the impact of this unsustainable fiscal situation on our current economy.
So I think the unsustainable path matters in the short run in various ways. Partly, the borrowing the government has done and anticipation of government borrowing can crowd out private investment to some extent. At the moment, with private investment weak anyway, the magnitude of that crowding out is less clear. In fact, we see Treasury interest rates, as you know, being very low at the moment. But there can be crowding out of investment. I think beyond that, the uncertainty about fiscal policy is probably weighing on households and businesses. They can recognize that there will have to be, as a matter of arithmetic, changes in taxes and/or spending relative to current policy, but they don't know what those changes will be. And I think that sort of uncertainty is naturally an inhibiting factor in decisions, particularly commitments of money over time to invest in factories and equipment, to invest by hiring people, for households to invest in housing and durable goods. That uncertainty is a piece, I think, of broader uncertainty about government policies. There are a lot of different policies that are, I think, up in the air in a way. And that policy uncertainty, of course, is a piece of a much broader uncertainty about the state of the economy and the income that households think they will have in the future and the demand for the goods and services that businesses think they will have in the future.
Well, I appreciate that. And as an economist, I appreciate your giving us really a sense of the importance of our task, because it's not just about cutting spending, is it? It's about the economy and jobs. And although we're not called the Jobs Committee, what we do will affect that sense of certainty and predictability going forward. And again,
yes,
not in the substantial ways we would hope, all of us, but it will make a difference and take us in the right direction. The alternative, of course, has been talked about today as well, which is if we don't do our work, what impact that could have to even make our prospects for economic growth more negative.
Yes,
I'm going to use some figures here that you may not trust because they're from the Office of Management and Budget. And you said earlier that you trusted the CBO figures, but I think they're consistent with yours. And let me start by saying I totally agree with what you said earlier. Mandatory spending dominates the federal, or mandatory spending dominates the federal spending. That was your quote a few minutes ago. Co-chairs Murray and Hensarling have also made that same point in various ways from a little different perspective, and I totally agree with that. And I think if this committee doesn't get at the issue, which is the biggest part of our budget, over 50% of the budget, 60% if you include interest on the debt, and the fastest growing part of our budget. It's gone from roughly 25% of our budget in the 1960s to over 50% today. If we don't get at that, the largest part and the fastest growing part of the budget, we will, of course, not have accomplished our goal. But having said that, let me give you some statistics on the discretionary side, since that's the topic of our hearing today. I'll give you some numbers from 1990 until today. Non-defense discretionary has risen during that time by 95%. which, by the way, is nearly double the 52% growth in defense spending. So 52% growth in defense spending from 1990 until today, 95% on non-defense. Now, admittedly, the defense spending is not as high because the increases we've seen have been more recent from 2001, which reflected an increase from the cuts in the 1990s on defense. So if you use just the last decade, defense would be higher. But let's look then at 2001 to 2011 on the non-defense side. Outlays on the education side, discretionary spending up 116% in the last 10 years. International spending up 102%. Veteran spending up 100%. Community regional development spending up 71%. Health research and regulation spending up 56%, and so on. So I just think we need to keep both these things in mind. One, that if we don't deal with the spending issues, it's tough to get this economy going. And second, we have seen some substantial increases in the discretionary spending, understanding that the BCA has now put those spending levels under more constraints. Do you agree with those numbers?
I don't know have those facts at hand, Senator, but I would not argue with your numbers.
Well, again, thank you for all your help to help us achieve the goal we've all talked about today, and we look forward to working with you going forward.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Kerry.
Dr. Elmendorf, thank you very much for being here. Thank you for the terrific work you and your team are doing.